50% of the workforce will retire in 15 years.
Providers are not making monies, therefore they're looking to save money at every place they can.
What we need in the sector is to be more brave. Sometimes we need that loud, brave soul that says, I'm willing to do this anyway.
We've got to work out a way to employ the staff. They come and work for us, not an agency, is really important. And sorry to all the agency firms out there, but that's...
We don't
They're driving
this yet, so that's fine.
But, you know, I mean, we all should...
But we could change our opinion.
We should have started.
Welcome to Time Well Spent, the podcast for decision makers, providers, and everyone working to make a difference in care. I'm Dane Mitchell, joined by my co-host, Rose Plater.
Together, we bring 31 years of combined experience and still counting, and a shared passion for reimagining aged care and community health. From policy and reform to leadership, culture, and connection, this is where we explore new ideas, hear what leaders really think, and uncover what it takes to create environments where time is truly well spent.
Australia's aged care sector is in transition and the numbers tell the story. The latest StewartBrown data shows the average aged care home loses $3.10 for every bed occupied every day, a 2 to 3% negative operating margin, and the 10th straight year in the red for the sector. Workforce costs are up 60% since 2021. Administration and compliance costs have jumped 15% in 2 years to $53.80 per bed per day. And while occupancy is back at 94.4%, most homes are still losing money. And it's not just residential care under pressure. StewartBrown's Support at Home pricing survey found that providers will need to lift service prices by around 39% just to maintain their current margins, before even factoring in the investment required to meet demand. By 2040, the number of Australians receiving in-home care packages will almost double to 1.7 million, requiring hundreds of thousands of new workers and billions in capital. The question now isn't what went wrong, it's what we do next. To unpack that, we're back with Stuart Hutcheon from StewartBrown, talking practical steps and real strategies for providers trying to stay viable in the new world of aged care. Stu, welcome back.
Thank you. Good to be back.
We spent the last episode talking about where we're at as a sector, losing $3.10 per bed per day, 10 years in the red. But for providers listening now, we want to talk about where do they start? Where's the profitability to be found and what should they be thinking about?
Obviously, there's all the key areas that we were talking about in the last episode, but it's how you actually break that down site by site is really what we talk about. So you can have your overall performance as an organization, but really when you're trying to get that extra bit of margin, that extra bit of return, we need to understand location by location, financial performance, and then what particular areas that we're going to look at. And as we've talked about, there really is residential aged care is broken up by those care element, the everyday living, and the accommodation. So start there. So where are we going to get to? And understanding your operational performance and trying to crack the code on your rostering around your direct care minutes, because even when you think about that, you don't want
your biggest cost, right?
Yeah, that's it. As much as you've got to meet minutes, you don't have too many minutes as well, because you're moving into loss rate. So you got to understand that matrix as well. Health and everyday living, additional services have got a part to play to get a margin.
Health stands for?
High everyday living fee, not help. So but understanding that and what can you get a margin out of that? Can you deliver that? Are really difficult. And I know we're going to talk about that later, but can you deliver it and get a return? But it comes back to that accommodation piece again. And it's about understanding your building. How much can you get that RAD price up to, and really challenge that RAD price to what you can get in the local area. What your competitors are doing is important. But honestly, when you look around different states and territories or cities, you see quite low RAD pricing compared to funds that people may be able to access through their home, their unit, that type of thing. So getting that right, so the flow on comes through.
The RAD return has got to pay for the cost of care, because if we're losing money, we're not charging enough. Well, that's the reality. Right?
I would say it's got to pay for the accommodation to get the return and support your everyday living. The cost of care should be met by a taxpayer subsidy.
Yes.
but we're not necessarily going to see a margin there, are we? So we were going to get that margin, and it is going to be in that accommodation area. That's what we really see. So understanding that cost, we talk about the rent model, those sorts of things, and we've written papers about that and spoken about it in our finance forums recently, is really, really important. But truly understand each of those sites and what we can get out of those sites, and making the manager of those sites financially accountable. And that's not me saying putting pressure on, that's me bring them along. So they're part of the business, they're part of the budgeting, they see the financial numbers, the tone and the top of where we're heading financially, and don't try and make people accountable for the things that they can't control. If they're in a really old building that can't be staffed properly under the new regime, you can only make someone accountable for, what they can work within as well. Balance sheet as well, understand your balance sheet is really, really important. And your liquidity, we've got the new liquidity rules coming in as well, but how you invest that, whether you're invested in the market through a JB Weir or someone like that, is really important rather than just a term deposit. So there's all those elements that sort of come in it to get an improved overall bottom line.
As a general rule for the RAD price, what would you say is too low? If you're in a metropolitan area, what should providers be looking at?
If you're in a metropolitan area, you should be applying to be above 750.
Yeah.
Depending on, again, the location, but you certainly want to be getting to your 750 now. Like, you think about that 550 price cap that was there for ages. Like literally it changed on the 1st of January and people went out and increased their prices from 550 to 750. Did anything happen?
No change to demand.
People still got full occupancy. So it's not about, I'm not trying to take advantage of people, but the funds are there because the sheer cost of delivering the services and having the accommodation available is expensive. The cost to build, we'll debate, right? But that's just gone up dramatically, hasn't it? Since COVID or whatever we want to say. It's just year-on-year increase. So that the money to pay for that doesn't come out of anywhere. So the RAD price hasn't really kept in pace with that. So it has to keep pace. Providers are looking at that. They're applying for higher amounts for people to pay. If you think...
Is 750 higher than that?
Well, I think there just shouldn't be any cap. Let the market decide to determine the price. You'll know what you can charge in your area and what people will be willing to pay.
How do you support the lower income?
Yeah, there's got to be the safety net, doesn't there? Because I would suggest under the current conditions that we know, if there's absolute demand and we're full, mum or dad's got severe dementia or acute needs, families getting desperate, what are people going to do? They're going to try and work outside the system to get into homes. So
or end up in hospital.
That's right. And that's a huge other problem, isn't it, that we're going to talk about.
Workforce costs have risen almost 60% in 4 years. In your opinion, what are the best performing providers doing with rostering, skills, etc.?
Yeah. So there's a few elements to this. We've obviously got the minutes. We've got to meet our direct care minutes. So as I might have just mentioned, you can't go over your minutes because you're not funded for that. And there are providers out there that have gone over their minutes, and that is hurting them in their bottom line. So there are providers, we're talking about in the last episode how direct care margin of $16 is propping up loss making in other areas of your P&L. I know of organisations who are losing at the direct care margin level. So that's from having too high a minutes. So the good providers know their roster, they have the workforce planning in place, and they know the change in rules that are coming to them around your care minute performance statement, the fact that you're going to be audited. So they're definitely getting those things in place, trying to reduce agency, and you've seen providers do that with that agency coming down in our overall survey. So that's an important one around that cost structure. Staff retention is a focus, no doubt, for everyone, and what avenues we can get to wherever we're located to get good staff and keep them. We're a big believer in making sure we're paying our people correctly. So we've got a payroll compliance team. You want to see it in our finance forums, like our, in the last 5-6 years, we've underpaid workers in the aged care sector close to $50 million. So I would have thought a good mechanisms, and it's because it's hard and it's complicated. The awards are complicated, the EAs are complicated.
And there's been hundreds of HR law changes in the last few years, right?
That's right.
From a government perspective.
Yeah. paying people correctly.
Just keeping up with it's hard.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. And it's a lot of pressure and those sorts of things. So if we pay people correctly, where applicable, we've got our not-for-profits with their PBI, fringe benefit, maximize those sorts of things, pay people correctly, but getting that is having it as an absolute focus for everyone in the organisation about the staffing and the rostering, as well as the board, as well as what is the incentives, because it was at the Aging Australia's National Conference, and the first presentation on day one was in and around Mark McCrindle around the demographic studies, and it's been around for a while, but the fact that we have 240 workers in the aged care sector, and the average age of a residential aged care worker is 48, and the average age of a community care worker is 50, and that 50% of the workforce will retire in 15 years. So there's a
time bomb there.
There's a huge issue with an aging workforce as well, which has been there for quite a while, but is how you keep them happy.
Yeah.
What arrangements you're going to have in place, what flexibility you're going to have in place, whether it's a working mum or a working dad, all those sorts of triggers around the roster are so important. And the fact that if you don't get it right in care, you're going to be punished as well.
Agency labour's been a killer for aged care providers over the last few years, probably particularly through that COVID period.
Oh, absolutely.
But your survey shows that's down from 6.6 to 5.2% of direct care revenue. What do you think is driving that improvement?
I think the direct effort by people who are realising that the cost of agency is not sustainable. It's just not. And so they have to find another way. They've made it a focus point. They've looked at the numbers and said, well, we've got to work out a better way to do this. We've got to work out a way to employ the staff. They come and work for us, not an agency, is really important. And sorry to all the agency firms out there, but that's...
We don't have any
they're
sponsoring us yet, so that's fine.
We all should...
But we could change our opinion.
We should have started for the right money. We should have started with agency. But I think just a call out on that line item in your P&L, even if you look at our survey data year on year and the way that just ramped up, people had to look at that as closely as they would look at the cost of catering or, the cost of repairs and maintenance, all those sorts of things. That line item just stood out so much as a huge cost to an organisation. And then you get into, from what I'm speaking with our clients and providers, is the cultural aspect or the buy-in from an agency worker or lack thereof compared to an employed worker of your organisation. There's a huge difference as well.
Yeah.
So there was a great talk at the Aging Australia conference from Warragul, and Jenny, the CEO, she's a regular at Yamba, which I learned, which is interesting, but they're doing school-based traineeships.
Okay.
And, getting kids in at high school, day a week, getting some experience in aged care. It's a great opportunity for young people to develop some skills, develop some communication skills.
Yes.
It's pretty good pay.
Yeah, that's right.
For them.
Yeah.
I think programs like that are going to be really important to, one, reduce our reliance on agency, but also I think that will help start changing that perception we've been talking about is, and it's great for older Australians to have young
ones
people
around them. Absolutely.
And it's great for the young people too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
And for them to know the people, right? That's all relationships.
Fully.
In the
and
end.
again, positive marketing of the aged care sector as well. As much to the community who are moving their families into that and paying for that, but for the workforce and people being engaged and wanting to work in this sector, taking advantage of Pacific Island programs and all those other types of programs that are out there.
And I do hope that that's a good news story that continues in that space, and people who have left, I guess, not the sector, but left their, provider and become an agency worker. I think I've heard of people who have done that, and they are returning now back to providers because, money doesn't pay for having to go into a new facility and you don't know your residents. Yeah. So that's, I think, good news.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
Okay, let's talk about care minutes. Every home's now audited against the 215-minute target, yet 36% of facilities still aren't meeting it, with penalties up to $33 per bed per day for non-compliance coming. How much financial pressure is about to be put on providers, and is it actually improving care, or is it just driving costs up?
Yeah, so improving care is difficult for me to comment on. I mean, they've done the work and suggesting that we need those minutes. I couldn't say whether it's improving care, and I think you get around and speak to providers, they'll have a view on that. Feels like very much a blunt instrument. Financial pressure is absolutely there. So now to meet those minutes, as I said, some providers might be over on minutes, like, might be over on RN minutes, and their thought process might be really hard to attract that RN to come and work with me. Why would I now want to not give them the shifts that they need, or have to have? Why would I want to let them go? So the pressure is there absolutely now, and it will continue to get to those targets, because having your accounting teams have the mechanism in place to see what the need is that costs to get to the minutes versus what your subsidy reduction is going to be under the new supplement regime that we're going to be in, or we're in it now, is really important. So absolute financial pressure to get to that, because pulling the wrong rein, if you like, in relation to that staff mix and the roster around meeting the minutes, because you can get it wrong pretty quickly, and it's how flexible you can be to move your rosters as well. And you're working with your workforce. People are sick, they turn up to work, all those sorts of things. They need leave, so you're going to build that in.
And the penalty's up to $33 per bed per day, right?
Yes, that's right. Absolutely. Yeah. And that's that's at the 85% target mark, and then it just scales up from there. So it can be, you just do the mathematics on what
can put you out of business.
Yes,
the reality.
That's right. So it'll be tracking that again, home by home within your organisation. Just has to be a KPI. Just has to be, and having the reporting to get the information out, it's really important. And it's becoming more important because, as we know, the minutes will be audited by a registered company auditor and have an audit opinion. So you got to have systems and processes in place around your payroll, around your roster, around your occupancy to report into that performance statement.
Yeah, I'd love to see more academics, I guess, in the space talking about the mandatory indicators that we are recording and whether we can try and devise some quality of life measure, because in the end, all of these minutes are meant for the purpose of the outcome of a better experience for the residents in our care.
That's right.
And there is all of this data out there. If we could connect the StewartBrown survey with some of those indicators, I think that'd be so powerful to get that true measure and an advocacy piece, because in the end, we all are in the sector to get better outcomes from those that are within it.
I've got to ask, and this is a bit of self-interest, Stu, and it's been a pet project or a pet issue of mine for a couple of years now since NAC come in, is, providers effectively have an expectation that they provide physiotherapy, what I do with Optimum Allied Health. They have to provide it. They have to do it to meet the quality standards. But we're not included in the care minutes, despite being a clinical service.
That's right.
Widespread, it's a cost for providers. I don't understand how that was excluded or why that was excluded from care minutes. Do you think that's going to change?
I think with enough pressure on, that should change. I mean, because numbers are telling us. It's 4 to 5 minutes per day is only allied health, and you think about allied health in the context, and you think about the changing cohort of resident that we're going to have, and there's, you might be generalising, but the baby boomer type resident that's coming in would be more used to having allied health services in their life.
Definitely.
When they're, general life now before they move into care. So the expectation that they'll get that and that'll be funded appropriately.
And there's so much talk over the last few years of reablement and how important reablement is. That's such a positive thing of NAC, and some of it was very positive, but you also had a drastic reduction in what providers were able to pay for in terms of physiotherapy hours because it's not directly funding. So it feels like it's a little bit, we want reablement, we want a positive experience where mum and dad can either maintain or potentially improve, or certainly at least reduce falls risks and things like that. But at the same time, we've got providers that are struggling to make money, but we've got a cost which is genuine clinical care. We're pressuring them to meet care minutes, but we're just not going to count these minutes.
Yeah, that's right.
It's
and
ridiculous.
If you included that, and you can't sort of blame providers, can you?
No,
because they're just trying to operate within their rules to meet their minutes. So if they were, had more investment in allied health or physio, and they've had to scale that back because they're going to get more minutes on the table for this. It doesn't really work out, does it? It's something that we need and should absolutely be there.
With the supported home program, we have seen a win that allied health is now counted as a clinical support. It just defies logic that we have a well-qualified, well-experienced person delivering hands-on care and we just can't count it. Like, where is the logic in it other than saving money, perhaps?
I mean, that is probably part of it.
Can the government afford to recognise it? But it's like the definitions around, group activities. We talk about loneliness. There's all of this kind of downplaying and watering down of those care minutes, which I know you don't like the word innovation, but it does actually make it really hard to innovate, because if I have a wonderful new care model that I want to implement and I've got an amazing local multidisciplinary team of staff, I actually can't go to the government and say, look, this is how I would like to handle my care minutes. Is that okay? There is no avenue with the department to do that. Yet in Northern Language, they said there would be.
But in our case, there's no additional cost because providers are already paying for it.
Yes. Yeah,
so it's actually no cost to the government. It's just recognition. All I would hope we would get is recognition for what we're already and what providers are paying for.
They're already doing. Yeah.
So maybe it's a lack of understanding about just how core it is.
Potentially. I think Stu just needs to push harder.
Well, hopefully it will change over time. I do know that allied health, like peak body's been pushing pretty hard on this.
They have been, yeah. Definitely.
And the numbers obviously from our end are there around minutes and dollars, etc., to put that on the table. But hopefully we can see some change. Things do change over time.
Technology's everywhere, dashboards, we've got automation, we've got digital care plans, but not all of it has been paying off. Where's tech actually improving the bottom line, and where is it just another compliance cost?
I think there's examples of both good things, improvements, efficiencies, automation, and then there's huge spend on tech projects that don't necessarily work out, and we've seen that through providers. And you can look through some providers, end of year financials to see write-off of investment in technology, because it's hard. It really is hard. But I've seen some great stuff with automation recently where people are getting bots or whatever to actually take away some manual processing. So that sort of stuff is really encouraging, that if we do get the right systems in place, we can get improvements and efficiencies. You got to have people believing in it. You got to have teams believing in it. I've got a client who their accounting back office is really lean, and it's lean in a sense of they've automated everything, absolutely everything. We go there, we do their audit work, and they get a good result. There's no issues. And then you go and other places, and there's still a lot of manual handling, a lot of manual intervention. So I would suggest we still got to continue that investment in tech, but there's got to be the right budget. It's got to be managed. There's many projects that kick off and there's overspends. It is the highest, most increasing dollar value number in our corporate administration survey, investment technology. Okay. So that there is evidence there it's happening. It's just about how you control that. And you just wonder, we're talking about smaller, even community-based aged care. How are they going to have the funds to spend on this? So how do they get the projects off the ground and get the investment there? So I think we're seeing that is happening, but there's no perfect system out there.
But there's so much talk and investment in AI across the world, really, in business. There's some real use cases for it when you are in, professional services type role. But one of the things I'm interested to see, and I'm a little bit skeptical of, is you go to the conferences, there's, everything's something.ai,
Right.
But how is that going to actually help frontline staff, people providing personal care?
Yeah, I'm no expert, but the thing that I've seen is how do you hear that, say, a registered nurse is spending 50% or more of their time in the office bashing away on a keyboard. But there's got to be a way to make that more efficient using AI technology to help with the notes, to help to create the information that we need to document to maintain quality standards, etc. And you don't want it just one size fits all. Like the whole purpose of it is that individualized.
And it's going to have services. To integrate. It's got to integrate into your.
That's right. Yeah.
clinical management system.
Yeah. So it has to be tested, obviously as well. There are lots of, go to the Aging Australia conferences. There's so many, software providers or AI providers, whatever we're going to call them there. So there's no doubt we'd be head in the sand stuff if we didn't think the future of it's there. It's how you harness it. Like how do you make that piece of AI that really great employee who's 80%, brilliant and a genius, but then there's that 20% of we're not sure about. How do you harness it? That
my suspicion is that the tech's probably already there to help, but I think it's a really challenging workforce training exercise and adoption exercise. You talked about the average age in, it's different for mine and Rose's generation. I was going to call her old there, but we'll skip that. Where, we've grown up with tech, but if you're 10, 15, 20 years older than us, which is the majority of the workforce in Resi Care, it's not second nature to you. So to get widespread adoption of, voice recording that we've got some in my physio clinics, and OT clinics, we've got some great tech where with consent, it'll record, give you a draft of a report, give you your clinical notes. Massive time saver. It's brilliant. But it's only as good as the information you put into it, and you've got to deliver some of your communication in a way that. Absolutely. So it's a workforce training challenge as much as it's buy-in, isn't it?
Absolute buy-in to believe in it. And I'm in my early 50s. Like the first time I used it, I was like, "Well, like everyone's got to have that moment of." We can really do this. Is this real? Does it work?
Can I trust this?
Yeah, trust is huge. Trust is, it's a big ticket.
And while we're, I guess, in this space of innovation and change within the heavily regulated space, at the moment we've got basically income that's capped. We have staff that is mandated. Our compliance is dictating a lot of that back office time. So what does real innovation look like in this space, and where's the room to do it?
It's restrained, isn't it, at the moment under the model, like the innovation around, if you think about the minutes, you don't get rewarded for meeting your minutes. If you've got other ways to innovate to get to those minutes, you just can't do it, can you, at the moment? So I think some of that stuff's been stifled, if you like, around the additional services as well. The rules are stronger, and there's obviously there's reasons for around that, but that's going to slow things down a little bit with the innovation. So I like the building innovations that we see around managing residents in their rooms and people moving around buildings, and that sort of technology style innovation there, I think is really good and important for the sector as well. As much as possible where we can use, whether it's technology or put systems in place to reduce manual handling, duplication, so more time can be spent on face-to-face service delivery, the better we're going to be. There'll be all sorts of different stories out there of different providers that are doing wonderful things in their particular area around innovation to keep residents engaged and happy. It's how does that document and add to your quality and safety, your accreditation, and add to your minutes is the challenge.
I rant to Rose about this all the time. Is I get frustrated with the constant talk of innovation, because I think as an industry we're in the clinical care and personal care.
Yeah.
And building great spaces, of course, Rose.
I think there's a bit of social in there.
Yeah, of course. But to do that well is if you do the basics well and people feel engaged, people feel supported, they're getting good personal and clinical care, I think that's a point of difference.
Yeah.
And I think, there's always so many new things thrown at providers. We need to consider this. There's so much regulatory change. I think as an industry, we just need to be and this is what I use in my business, is we want to be the best at the basics. We do a great clinical care. We train our staff well. They communicate well with the providers we're working with. And I've found that if you do that well, people are generally pretty happy.
That's it. Yeah. Good caring humans.
Speaking on the topic of innovation with the wonderful Natasha Chadwick, who is still called an innovator in the space after running her small house micro town for coming up to 10 years. And we were discussing it that what we need in the sector is to be more brave, to have grit, to stick to know what, if you've got a model or an innovation that you want to see happen, you have to advocate it. And sometimes we need that loud, brave soul that says, I'm willing to do this anyway. And
take a risk.
You can take the $33, but this is the model and it's best for these reasons.
When you look at your top quartile results, Stu, the best operators are about $10 to $12 per bed per day ahead of the rest. What are they doing differently?
So this is where we get into that kind of tone at the top, leadership all the way, flowing all the way through. What we would say in the past as well is that the facility, so if we're talking about home by home again, the best performing homes, the engagement in, and I'm going to talk purely finances here, that they're engaged in the financial outcomes as well. We know we've got to have the best quality care, but we've got to be able to fund that quality care. So the providers we see doing well is the financial piece, whether it's our survey benchmarking data, the budget process, the forecasting process, the monthly financial results. The care manager or the facility manager is involved with that and may even have some KPIs around financial outcomes. They definitely have got that. We would see people come up to a conference, care managers, facility managers say, we love your data. We run the place off your data. I moved organization, and they don't benchmark. I've told them they have to benchmark with you because I can't run the home without that. So that engagement around the financial piece helps them to get a better financial returns, at understanding the numbers. And that's the person, doing the rostering. So you think about a rostering decision, Dane doesn't turn up to work. What do? Do I call everyone else in my pool to fill that position, or I just ring up the agency? There's a dollar understanding of that dollar impact on that one decision on the way through. So
they understand the consequence of that easier option.
Absolutely. They've made accountable for that. They're monitored on those results. So having the tech to get that data out so they know how they're progressing. And again, I might have mentioned earlier, can only control what they control in their piece, whether that's the roster, the mix of residents, how's our occupancy tracking? They understand all those key metrics to get to that bottom line number. You have other people who are involved. So who's in charge of ordering for your hospitality services? Do they understand the cost structure? Do we get a best possible deal we can get on those particular dollar line items as well? So it's an overall focus on the financial outcome is absolutely what we see. Size, location of the facility they're running is really, really important. We talked about that earlier, that,
80 to 100 beds.
80 to 100 bed if you've got a really small
Are they generally like they have their homes in a close geographical area? Does that make a difference?
Not necessarily, but they do operate appropriately depending on where the location is, and they understand the challenges of each location as well. That's really important. But that absolute engagement and being able to make timely decisions on changes, like probably more so when we were operating the ACFI world, was changing resident mix, different funding levels for that resident, new resident through the door, understanding how that impacts. Even when you get down to the person coming through the door, are they a RAD payer or are they a DAP payer? What's the financial outcome of that for the organisation as well? So just those key kind of focus areas.
It sounds like it's disciplined management of both the finance side, but also the operational decisions. It's a disciplined management.
Absolutely. Place. Yeah, which you would have in any business.
Of course.
To be honest, that you need in any business. So it's no different in residential aged care. Just because we're delivering care, we still need good business policies and procedures as well.
Now, regional and community-owned providers are the backbone of care in country towns, but they don't have the same access to capital or workforce like we've discussed. If you were talking with a small community-based provider to stay viable, where would you start?
Understanding the current financial performance and position. So a lot about maintaining that home in that particular area is actually to understand the balance sheet and the P&L. And I say that, so money in the bank, and we've seen lots of examples of this, is understanding that cash position, but also your asset. So is your asset now really, really old? And have you been making operating losses for a long, long time? Do you have the funds to refurb that? Do you have the funds to add on additional beds to get scale? Can you access a capital grant to do this? I was talking with a lady at our finance forums just last week in WA, and they've just got a capital grant. She's really keen to understand as a board member, what are we going to do with this? How do we make this work? How do we remain capable of that? Because sometimes too, when we see, it doesn't have to be in a community-owned regional area, but when you have new builds and project management going on, Do you have the expertise in the board or the management team to actually deliver on that project? And when we're looking at the shiny new toy, is the existing business operations still meeting their performance that they should be meeting along the way as well? So really understanding where you sit before you think about your next build or investment, to me, is really important. And can you do it? Do you have the skills to do it? That's on a kind of the balance sheet development, where we're heading as an org. Could we get bigger? What do we do? But I also say the same financial and business acumen around the financial performance, the understanding of the roster and your funding, all those sorts of things. Really important, I would say, is know where you stand. And if you have to make a decision about plan A, plan B, and plan C, what is that future? Is you make that decision in a good...
So understand how much financial runway you have.
Absolutely.
To figure it out. And then if that doesn't look as you'd hope it would,
yes,
what's your plan B? What organisations can you potentially become a part of?
Can you partner? Do you need to merge? But don't make the decisions too late where you don't have a say.
Yeah.
And we've seen that. I mean, we would have all seen that happen. If you let it go too long, and of course, being a director, 2 directors in the room, you've got
carry some
personal risk around being a director under corpse law and those sorts of things, but also under the Aged Care Act, there's this thing called permitted uses of RAD money, which is really, really important. So understanding where you sit. There are some providers in these particular areas that are going to be very difficult for them to go it alone as much as they want to go it alone. But how do we get the best outcome if we do merge in with another provider, that this community-based service remains in town forever?
So occupancy's, it's at 94.4%. So highest since before COVID, yet plenty of homes are still losing money. Do we expect high occupancy to continue? And if so, the path to profitability can only be finding cost savings or more income.
Occupancy should absolutely be maintained at a high level, depending on where you're located and what the competition is like near you and what's your product like. If you have an aging build, or maybe rooms that are not fit for purpose, or maybe shared rooms or something like that, shared bathrooms, where around the corner or down the road, mum or dad can access a bed that they might think's better, that's going to come into play there. But the demand numbers tell us that occupancy is just going to maintain at that high level. Of course, in relation to your financial performance around the environment, is going to be taking full advantage of the changes coming in from 1 November. Absolutely. So there's always going to be a time where, how do I maximize the revenue based on the rules? There's no doubt when you go through the data, there are particular cost areas that people need to look at closely, and getting the best possible deal on your purchasing power, getting your roster right. Those things they'll be there forever, won't they?
Yeah, that's business, isn't it? But it's acutely felt in aged care.
Absolutely. Yeah. Yes.
Your pricing survey showed providers need a 39% lift in service prices just to maintain the current margin. Now, that's a huge shift. Do you think we'll get there?
We need to get there. The reality is, the support at home is, it's a change of government policy that's driven it. Providers didn't wake up and sort of say, I better go out there and increase 40%. Welcome clients. Of course, there's the no worse off principle in support at home. So there's probably going to be an element of, depending on how you market it and what you look at, of new clients coming in. They didn't know what the past looked like. They just know what their price is now, and they're going to compare your price now to other competitors on the way through. So I am concerned that people would be fearful of increasing that price because of the impact with their existing client base. The average length of stay of a person in a support at home or a home care package is 2.4 years. So there is still an element of people being in a package, but it's not extensive amount of time, and there is the no worse off. So it's going to be really challenging, or already is really challenging, because we're not that far away of providers have had to put their prices up, and they've had to communicate that pricing is going up. As long as everybody looks to maintain a fair and reasonable increase in their price, because you still got to get a good margin, don't you? We still need to be getting a 9-10% return on revenue margin to have a viable and sustainable investable supported home sector.
But I think the statistic was that that's to maintain the current margins, which aren't 9 or 10%.
That's
right?
exactly
That's
right.
a 40% increase.
4.4%. Yeah.
To maintain a 4% margin,
Yeah,
which
that's right.
no one's driving Ferraris on the back of.
No one is driving Ferraris on the back of that. And it's interesting because we've just done our finance forums around the countryside. The different pricing around the country is really interesting, where some particular states actually already have quite good higher pricing, and that might be led by particular providers in that state. And
that have a large market,
But other areas might be a lot lower. I mean, I was looking at some numbers. If you compared Brisbane or you compared Queensland to Tasmania, Tasmania's pricing is very, very low, but their cost structures will be similar. We've got similar pay rates around the country, around the awards and the EA. So getting that price is just absolutely paramount for the ongoing financial performance for support at home, along with understanding your cost structures and getting efficiency and staff utilisation.
And so like the residential aged care survey, you would have your top 25 percentile. What are they doing differently?
Setting the price at the right level to get the right margin, encouraging that working with their clients to utilise their package. So we know unspent funds on average is about $15,000 per client at the moment. We've got over $4 billion of unspent funds around the country. Those providers who've been able to encourage the clients to utilise and use their package is another driver to successful financial performance, but also those that are monitoring their fixed overheads, so the administration cost structure, their care management cost structure, but then the direct service delivery that they are actually monitoring and, I guess, putting in place the right utilization of their staff. We talk about us accountants in the room. We've been doing timesheets and billing time forever and a day. We record 5 minutes every day. It's so much fun, isn't it? So I can see you smiling going, I'd hate to do that. But your businesses would be similar. You're recording time
we do that
on a
in
job.
Our occupational therapy.
That's it. You're
service.
recording time to build a clients. That's what we're doing in Support at Home. Whether we like it or not, we're invoicing for 15 minutes, half an hour of service. So the simple example I give is if you employed a direct care worker in home care and you paid them for 30 hours in a week, how many of those 30 hours can you bill a client for? And we've got to manage that productivity and utilization stuff. And that's what the successful providers will be doing.
Well, it's a fee-for-service model, right?
Yes, that's right.
Yeah. Efficiency is important. You're delivering government-funded care. It's not on the government to provide us very healthy margins. You got to find that yourself.
It's individualised consumer direct care, individualised package. There's no block funding, there's no cross subsidisation. It's that individual has that much to spend. Can we deliver the services that they were assessed for and do that in a way that we're going to get a margin?
I want to talk about the higher everyday living fee, which we touched on earlier. On paper, it's another potential lever for viability, charging some residents for more services. But I'm concerned about the admin and compliance cost of the health system. Is it going to be practical for providers to implement, or would they be better off potentially having, say, a higher RAD price and providing that higher experience to everyone?
It's difficult. So I guess existing providers of additional services and extra services who've already had that in place will be looking to work within the new rules to make it work. There's some standout things in the rules about having to get a new resident to approve, that they actually want to be in that system. That's quite difficult.
Yeah, and that has to happen after they've already been admitted, right? So it's a separate process to admission.
Yeah, that's exactly right. So where you would normally have providers who've been doing this for some time, the entire home might be an additional services home or now under the help. So that's,
you might have 40%.
That's changed. I think it'd be really difficult to implement it into an existing home with the existing residents to try and implement these things. Now, other specialists in this area might think they can implement it and it's easy, but it's hard, isn't it, having the haves and the have-nots, and it's hard to do the administration of it as well, and the reliance on your staff and your team members kind of policing it, isn't it? Like who gets what, at dinner time, who's on the higher package, who's on the standard package, whatever the case may be. There's got to be a need to use technology. There's got to be a need to educate and train your staff. There's got to be a way of educating and training not only the resident coming through the door, but the families to understand and deal with this. The one thing I would say though, I would have thought, and I've had some experience with this, is if the family is desperate, they can sign up for anything because they need the bed. We've got high occupancy, we've got demand. What are you going to do?
But if you can't sign them up to health, say until they've been admitted, is that part of that? They can't be part of that admission conversation.
That's right. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So it is really complicated, and the training for the team just has to be on point. I would say.
Well, it's just a sales process too, right? So you're now asking your care and clinical staff to.
Yeah, so they've got to believe in it.
Sell stuff.
Yeah.
And
which is difficult.
Wonderful Gwenda Darling from the Council of the Elders, she spoke about this from her own perspective. She's living with dementia. The idea that if she needs to move into a residential facility, that she'll be sitting across from someone who might be able to have the beer and she can't.
Yes.
That's not really equitable, and it won't necessarily make sense to the person in the chair either, whose experience it will affect.
It'll be an interesting rollout of that, I'd say.
Yeah.
I don't think we have all the answers.
Yeah, I don't think so either. And how you can make it as simple as possible from an administrative point of view, really important.
For your staff.
That's right. Can you pull the RAD lever and not do it?
Yeah.
Is worth investigating.
Yeah.
If it makes
Reach
sense.
out to you to talk about that.
That's it. Absolutely. Well done.
Joe, if we get this phase right, support at home, funding, making aged care investable, or I think it was you maybe that said make it bankable.
Yes.
What does a sustainable aged care sector look like for you? Like, what's the end game we're looking for?
Yeah. So the end game, we have to be obviously taking into account the needs of the people that coming into aged care and what their needs are, and the change in, the boomers and beyond, what they want. That's got to be, number one is looking up that. There's got to be a safety net for people with low means who can't afford to pay for their care. But if you can afford to pay more, you need to pay more to keep this sector viable and sustainable. Absolutely, residential aged care, we've got to be able to try and get to this $20,000 EBITDA per bed per annum, a 4% return on investment in new builds at that, $500K, whether that's a number, but let's just talk to that. We're going to be able to get to that number to make it sustainable, viable, investable in the future to do those new builds. We've got to get support at home with a 10% return on revenue, to invest in the technology that we keep talking about, invest in the teams, the recruitment, and how we attract the workforce is going to be really important for the future. And I think something we've touched on in this episode and the last episode is how we continue to drive the marketing of aged care to the community about how important it is. But from a pure financial perspective, it costs money, and providers need to be able to get a return to continue to do this now and in 10, 20, 30, 40, 50 years.
And so many of the problems are downstream of having spare cash flow to invest in a solution.
Absolutely.
And so many of the public perception issues are providers are not making money. Therefore, they're looking to save money at every place they can, doing the best within a pretty tough framework.
Yeah, there's not much money out there.
No, and it's working in, with new rules. We've got the new liquidity rules around default liquidity, minimum liquidity amounts, and, evaluated amounts, is understanding that, making sure we make our liquidity work for us as well, that we can set it aside. Important strategic decisions to be made about our assets in particular.
We need to make aged care investable again.
We do. Absolutely.
You get a hat for that, Rose. Stu, thank you. I hope this is time well spent.
Thanks, Dane. Thanks, Rose. Appreciate it. It's been good.
Thanks for listening to this episode.
If this was time well spent for you, follow the podcast so you never miss an episode.
If you want to support us, leave a review and share it with someone in your network who might get value from it.
Finally, a thanks to our partners who make this possible. Painters, your design and construction partner.
And Optum Allied Health, your physiotherapy and allied health partner. You can find the links in the show notes.
Thank you for listening. We'll see you on the next episode.